I'm from New Jersey. Do you know that in New Jersey, unlike a lot of states, you have an attendant pour your gasoline? You knew that, right? Well, you know, the stress of ministry, I was feeling poorly, and I was throwing up, and I had a terrible night, and somebody called me from the church I was serving and said, you'll never know this, but Stephen Miller, longtime member of the church, had passed away, and his wife, widow, only wants you to conduct the service of his funeral. I said, no, I can't get up. I can't. And I thought, no, I have to go because she's that important. And I loved him and I love her. So I whipped something together and I get there. And you'll be pleased to know I got through it. And the service went okay. Then we drove. The fellow's name was Henry, who was the funeral director. We drove in the hearse to the cemetery, and I was feeling queasy, and I got through that too. And they took what appeared to be a long time to leave. They weren't, but I felt it because I was feeling so poorly. Well, I said, Henry, you got to get me home because I'm not feeling well at all. And it was then he said, yeah, you know, you don't look so hot. And he said, I don't know if you've ever done this, but he opened the side door of the hearse. He said, yeah, why don't you lay in there and put a pillow there? And I did that. Okay, I'm like, and I thought, I wonder how many people have this experience that are not dead. You know? And did you know something else? That in a funeral car like that, there are no way to open the door. Well, why would there be any need for that, right? And in addition to that, the windows have curtains on them, you know? You can like open it, whatever. So I'm in there, and we're riding along, but it wasn't pleasant at all. Probably the mistake I made was listening to Henry and laying there. I thought it might be helpful. It wasn't. And I said, no, I got to get out. I got to go. Wait. Henry can't hear me because there's like this section and it's glass. He can't hear me. I knocked. Oh, help. I got to go out. I'm going to throw up, Henry. And the car stopped. Oh, thank goodness. I didn't know this, but Henry stopped to get gas. And oddly enough, you know, the young man, he poured the gas. You know, I said, let me out. And he said, hey, there's a voice in there. Henry said, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry, just, I heard a voice. No, don't worry about it. And finally I said, oh, and he's got the gas right there, and there's the window. So I opened the curtains, and I went, he said, oh, and then I threw up and hit the window. And he's running down the street, and Henry's running after him. And he's trying to, and I said, well, I still didn't get out. How am I supposed to get out of here? Now Henry left. Everybody, you know. What that taught me was a lot. But imagine the great Dr. Martin Luther King hiding under his covers, reading Paul Tillich's The Courage to Be, shaking because he didn't know what was coming. Imagine a man who starts a movement and he has no idea what the outcome will be, but he knows he can't do anything but start the movement. Well, there were more times Dr. King was afraid than he ever was confident, but he trudged on. He would have been 94 years old today. Born on the 15th of January, 1929. Now, let me tell you a little bit that you might know and you might not know. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. originally was born with the name Michael. And his father was Michael. And his father was so enamored with Martin Luther, the reformer, that he went down in 1934. He went down with his son, and he had both of their names changed to Martin Luther King Sr. and Martin Luther King Jr., 1934. Well, as Martin Luther King Jr. grew, he grew with exceptional stature as a student. Age 26, he donated his papers and received a PhD from Boston University. Didn't get any tax benefit from doing that. And let me tell you about September 20th, 1958. Dr. King is in a book signing store. And people are lined up to read his books because he was gaining stature after the incident with Rosa Parks in Montgomery. And his book he was signing. And a black woman came up to him and said, "Are you Dr. Martin Luther King?" He said, "Yes, I am." And she took a letter opener and stabbed him in the chest. And then they rushed him to the hospital. I think it was Lincoln Hospital in New York. And doctors said, had he even sneezed, he would have died. And now, a short while later, a young student, very, what would you say, idealistic, like you and me. She wrote to him and she said, "Dr. King, I am a high school student, a white girl from White Plains High School in White Plains, New York. Now, my children attended that school, White Plains High School." And she wrote him a letter, and she said, "I read about you, and I read what the doctors said. They said if you were to sneeze, you wouldn't have lived. So, Dr. King, I just want to send you this letter to thank you because you didn't sneeze." He read that to many people. And had he sneezed, this is what's so incredible, we would not have had him for the next 10 years riding through the marches of the South to end Jim Crow. There would have been no "I Have a Dream" speech, no Civil Rights Bill in 1964, no Voting Rights Bill, no Nobel Prize in 1964. He got $54,000 for that and gave all of it to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. There would be no Poor People's Campaign in 1968. There would be no prophetic witness against the war in Vietnam, which Coretta Scott really pushed him to do. Now, as we celebrate the man, the only individual who's ever gotten a day, November 2nd, 1983, President Ronald Reagan signed the bill that became law. A day, the third Monday of every January would be Dr. Martin Luther King Observance Day, of which Arizona said no. Eventually they said yes, and of which now Mississippi says, no, we're going to celebrate, but we'll celebrate Robert E. Lee's birthday, which is January 19th. Aren't they nice people over there? Gee. Well, there were imperfections to the man we honor. White and black women desperately wanted intimacy with him, sleep with him. His staff had to keep them away from him. And his doubts were severe. He was in that hotel room, number 306, on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Everybody who was there thought that. The reporters were told that he's a target, and they followed him around. It is alleged by sources that James Earl Ray shot him. And the FBI said that they had a bag in the front of a storefront behind the men's boarding house, and that convinced them that it was James Earl Ray who killed him in the bathroom and with a high-powered rifle. And the owner of that men's boarding room sold the bathtub to somebody at the highest bidder. These imperfections were ones that people lifted up. Was Bayard Rustin a communist? A gay man who operated within the Southern Christian Leadership Conference? Did Martin Luther King have ties to communism that would embarrass John F. Kennedy? Is that the reason Attorney General Robert Kennedy agreed with J. Edgar Hoover to sign that order? Yes, you may tap his phones, and you may do surveillance on him wherever he goes. That's a fact. Don't want to embarrass the president. Now, why do we honor Dr. King? See, that's the greatest thing. Why we honor Dr. King has to do with his vision for all of America, I think. Dr. King saw something that many people didn't see, that we were all sick. The whole country was sick. Did you ever hold a grudge against anybody? Now, you're in church. Well, you know, it takes a lot of energy to have that kind of anger. It takes a lot to, I don't know, just eventually you have to come down off of that. But he saw that the country was sick, and the way they treated people of color, minority status, of women, was absorbing even the white energy of all the people of the citizens. It was a fact that we were sick, and we all needed healing. That's lost in the struggle for equality, where the state of Louisiana would spend $3,000 per child, white child, for their education. A mere $650 was spent on people of color for their education. He was cozy and friendly and cooperative with the President of the United States. But John F. Kennedy didn't have too much concern about Dr. King's issues, and yet Dr. King knew his place in history. He wanted President Kennedy to sign a second Emancipation Proclamation. The first one was signed January 1st, 1863. So on January 1st, Dr. King said, wouldn't it be great if 100 years later, exactly to the day, you signed an Emancipation Proclamation too? President Kennedy said no. Then, with the assassination of President Kennedy, of which Dr. King felt, I'm next. He was more right than he was wrong. There came the Civil Rights Bill. Now, you could say a lot of things about Lyndon Johnson, but he got that bill through, and he was determined by his folksy mannerisms and by what he appealed to people for. Right now, there are roads in certain states that go right into mountains. He gave them all of that. He appealed to Everett Dirksen of Illinois, the top Republican. And he said, Everett, when my name goes up there on that bill to become law, your name is going to be right there with me. And then he'd lean over. So what do you say? Well, he got it. And it is there. It all happened. Oh, it was a celebration day. And when Dr. King went to receive his award in Oslo, Norway, the people there thought he was one of the most important people of America. And he and Ralph Abernathy said, we didn't know what to say to these people, like about what bills are coming up or how they could effectuate better lives for people who were suffering and in poverty, the likes of which we do not know. But times are a-changing. You know, that great line by, how many years can a mountain exist before it washes to the sea? How many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? Yes, how many times can a man turn his head pretending he doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. The times, they are a-changing. He's extraordinary. I didn't know Bob Dylan, but I knew Pete Seeger. And he was an impressive person, Bob Dylan. And his words were incredible. But his words were more for the future. And we still got a long way to go. Now, Dr. King knew that. Here we are, so many years later, celebrating, rejoicing, standing up even if you have to stand alone. So what did he do? Everybody except Coretta Scott King, his wife, said, do not come out against the war in Vietnam. And then his great famous line, but a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We have to. Because an unjust law is no law at all. And we've gone too far to turn back now. He opposed the Vietnam War on April 3rd, 1967, exactly 1 year before he was killed in the Riverside Church in New York. It's a profound speech. When he was arrested many times, like in Birmingham, all of those ministers and priests and rabbis took out a full-page ad in the Birmingham Post and said, get out of Dodge. We need you to leave. We somewhat agree with your ideas, but it's your methods that we disagree with. To which he wrote back to the 8 clergy, 2 of which were United Methodists. I don't usually write back. I hardly ever write back to anybody, but that's okay. I'm writing back to you now to ask you, what would you say to your daughter when she wants to go to the amusement park in Funtown and she's not allowed entrance because of her color? What would you say to your daughter? And if you've ever read it, most people have not. Letter from a Birmingham jail is the most profound civil rights document in the history of humanity. I shiver when I read it. And he said, the real threat to our society as people is not the KKK on the fringe or the Black Panthers on the fringe. It's that crowd in the middle, the mediocre, middle-class group of people that feel more comfort in neither taking a yay or a nay position on anything, just as long as they don't have to deal with it. Now, my question today, and I could say this in this pulpit, this was so great about being here. Where were these other clergy that have stature? You know, they all ended up on the wrong side of history. Where was Billy Graham? Where was Robert Schuller? Where was Norman Vincent Peale? We used to say in seminary that Paul was appealing, but Peale was appalling. Where were they? Well, they were hiding out in white America. Now that hurts me. Who was there? It's great. It's so great you said that. Unitarians were there marching with him. And they were on the march. What's our future? we're on the march. We've got things to deal with, don't we? Abortion, voting rights, gays, and now we say happy birthday to a man who would have been 94 today. Now, we all know of his accomplishments. We all know what he did. Can you imagine what it was like for him? Any moment. I remember watching the tapes. He was speaking in a church, and the thunder and the lightning was, the rain. And he thought it was bullets. And they were jumpy because they were ready. They were ready to kill him. And I've said many times, I've said it time and time again, I don't know if J. Edgar Hoover had anything to do with Martin Luther King Jr.'s death. I don't have enough information. I have my thoughts. And I don't buy the story of the bag and James Earl Ray and any of that. But there's one thing that I think he learned. I think the lesson was also one that I learned. You can kill the dreamer, but you will never kill the dream. And so I thank Dr. King for that lesson, even though he paid for it with his price. Isn't it odd that people of nonviolence, his mentor was Gandhi, that people who believe that you can effectuate change by non-violent means all died violently. So I've tried to give you just a little something that maybe you didn't know. But today, I sincerely want to thank Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. for something he did not do. Dr. King, I want to thank you for not sneezing. Amen. Amen.